Good morning. We're going to get started this morning with an invocation led by Lieutenant Steve Harris, chaplain for the Oklahoma City Fire Department, and that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Lennon Shaw, representing Girl Scouts Troop 711. Please stand as you are able.
Let us pray. Love God, love people. Lord, let us realize how much you love us, and somehow let us understand how to return that to you. Lord, let us love our neighbor in the city. Let us be kind to each other. Let us walk and greet each other. Let us set the example for the world to see. Lord, we lift up all the people in this room that are making decisions, that they would keep them two things in mind as they discuss and do things that make our city thrive and prosper going forward. And we thank you for this beautiful time to be alive for you. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you, Lieutenant Harris, and thank you, Lennon. All right, I call this meeting of the City Council to order, and I will now head to the front for some presentations. Thank you, sir. Why don't we have our friends representing Senior Center Month come forward? All right. Well, of course, we are very proud of all our facilities, especially serving seniors here in Oklahoma City. And so I would ask the clerk to read this proclamation for Senior Center Month.
Whereas the National Council on Aging recognizes September as Senior Center Month, and whereas older residents are valued members of our community who invest their wisdom and experience to enrich the lives of others. And whereas the City of Oklahoma City offers numerous facilities dedicated to the well-being of older residents. And whereas these currently include the Will Rogers Park Senior Activity Center located at 3501 Pat Murphy Drive, the MAPS 3 Senior Health and Wellness Center located at 11501 North Rockwell Avenue, and the Pete White Senior Center and Wellness Center located at 4021 South Walker Avenue. And whereas the 3rd and 4th MAPS 3 Senior Health and Wellness Centers are currently under construction in far south.
May I stop you? I've never had to do this before, but this is obviously last year's proclamation. I'll just go ahead and say that obviously the MAPS 3 Senior Wellness Centers in Northeast and far south have opened and are spectacular. And Amy, might I suggest you start with the next whereas right after that, and we'll clean this up later.
Whereas through a variety of programs, services, and activities, our senior centers provide countless hours of support and encouragement to older adults. And whereas our senior centers help older residents meet new friends, explore common interests, and improve their health. And whereas this year's theme for Senior Center Month is Powering Connections. And whereas Oklahoma City is proud to recognize the important role that senior centers play in our community and the many benefits they provide to our valued senior residents. Now therefore, I, David Holt, Mayor of the City of Oklahoma City, hereby proclaim September 2024 as Senior Center Month in Oklahoma City.
Well, thank you, Amy. And as we just discussed, it has been an exciting year for senior centers in Oklahoma City with, I guess it really is just kind of in the last year, 18 months, it's all a blur, but that we've opened these last two in Northeast and far south. And it's an important and major commitment to the seniors of our community. And what I always love about these senior centers is that they change lives, you know, they really do in a unique way. Well, we're joined here by our Parks Director, and we'd love to hear a few words from you about the work of our senior centers, and I think you have some special guests from one of them today. Melinda, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, that proclamation's last year's. That was not the one I wrote. Yes, so again, our senior centers are incredibly important, and that so important so that it is nationally recognized across the country for the importance and the role that they play in our residents' lives. And today I wanted to really highlight some really special people who really help our Pete White Senior Wellness Center excel and serve the people that come through every day. We've got management, we've got instructors, we've got volunteers, and also people who work our front desk to greet people every day with a smile. Believe me, her smile is amazing. Give us a smile. Told you. But anyway, as our seniors come into our centers, they're always excited to come in and meet one another and enjoy a meal together and have activities together for just a better overall well-rounded experience, especially making connections if they are facing depression issues or anything else. So the mental health of our seniors, the physical activity of our seniors just means that they will have a much longer and healthier life. So thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you. Let's hear it for all the folks who work in our senior center.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if we could bring Aubrey up front. Well, Aubrey is our Employee of the Month, and we'd like to learn a little bit more about you, so I'd ask the clerk to read this resolution.
Whereas Aubrey Atherton has been a city employee for 31 years and currently works in the planning department. And whereas Aubrey is a management specialist supporting planning administration. And whereas Aubrey manages the planning department's budget, purchasing, and human resources needs, in addition to countless other duties, all with a smile on her face. And whereas Aubrey's staff knows her to be a capable and professional leader who has a positive attitude even when things seem impossible. And whereas Aubrey sincerely tells her employees every day how much she appreciates them and how pleased she is to have them on her team. And whereas Aubrey exemplifies the planning department's values of integrity, professionalism, and taking ownership in her work while setting a high bar for quality and timeliness. And whereas Aubrey's attitude encourages employees to confide in her because of her trustworthiness, compassion, and competence. And whereas this council desires to recognize Aubrey Atherton for her dedication, compassion, and commitment to the residents of the city of Oklahoma City. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the city of Oklahoma City that they do hereby thank and commend Aubrey Atherton, September 2024, South Oklahoma City Kiwanis Club Employee of the Month.
Well, thank you. Now, this is a resolution, so let's see if we can get a motion in a second for you. We have a motion and a second. I wish to vote aye. Passes unanimously. Well, we're very grateful for your work, and it obviously represents, it's a great example of what we think are the best city employees in the country. We'd love to hear a few words from you, if you're so inclined.
Yes, please. Well, thank you. First of all, it's such an honor to receive this award. I'm so grateful to the Kiwanis Club, to council, to the mayor. Thank you very much. I couldn't do my job on a daily basis without my staff, Mark Michaud, Robin, our planning department staff, our division heads, our planning leadership, Jeff and Lisa. Thank you so much. I've learned so much over the last 31 years working in multiple departments. I've been very fortunate to have worked in finance, parks, HR for a little while, and utilities. So thank you very much for this award. It's an honor.
Thank you for your dedication to the city. Let's hear it for Aubrey. Sounds like you got a lot of team members here. All right, Drew, come on up. Drew Rhodes is our Teacher of the Month, and we'd like to learn a little bit more about you, Drew. So I'm going to ask the clerk to read this resolution.
Whereas Drew Rhodes has been named Teacher of the Month for September 2024 by the Oklahoma City Public Schools Foundation and Rotary Club of Oklahoma City. And whereas Drew serves as a social studies teacher at Emerson South Mid High School, where his personal mission is to positively impact the school environment by lifting students' voices and creating safe spaces and opportunities for students to cope and grow. And whereas Drew is the runner-up for the Oklahoma City Public Schools District Teacher of the Year for 2024. And whereas Drew demonstrates unconditional love for his students, inspiring, respecting, and protecting them. And whereas Drew believes in empowering his students through teaching with real-world experiences and civil responsibility. And whereas Drew is intentional in instilling life lessons both inside and outside of the classroom. And whereas Drew's involvement with community partners creates opportunities for his students to engage with local professionals. And whereas Drew believes that cycles of abuse, poverty, and struggle can be broken and the lives of students can be saved through education. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Oklahoma City that they do hereby recognize and commend Drew Rhodes on his selection as September 2024 Teacher of the Month by the Oklahoma City Public Schools Foundation and Rotary Club of Oklahoma City.
Well, thank you. Now, again, this is a resolution, so we're going to see if we can pass it for you, Drew. See if we can get a motion in a second. All right, we've got it. Cast your votes. I wish to vote aye. Passes unanimously. Well, you're clearly doing some really inspirational work, Drew, and we're very grateful for your service to the young people of our city, and we'd love to hear a little bit of that inspiration this morning. For sure. The floor is yours.
Thank you. God bless. First, I just want to say thank you so much for this honor. I definitely have to give praise to God, my grandparents who are no longer here, but throughout their lives, they served students. They were educators. My mom teaches down the street from me. My wife is at PC West, where we've just been teachers since we've been here, basically. So I just want to say a part of that resolution that talked about unconditional love. You know, love is the greatest gift that we were given from God. And oftentimes, I think sometimes we overlook the second greatest gift, which is wisdom. Education is the foundation of wisdom. Education can change every major crisis in this country. And we are all teachers. We're all blessed with that ability. How you lead your life, how you lead your house, how you lead the city, all of those things are modeled to our students. And I just want to put on your spirits today to be the best teacher you can be in your life and touch a young person today, because when you watch the news, you see exactly what I'm seeing. But I promise you, they're our future and they can make things brighter. Thank you. God bless.
Well done. Let's hear it for Drew. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Okay, and we also have some reappointments to the Human Rights Commission. That's item 3C, and we can take a motion on that. A motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 4, items from council. There are none today. Item 5, city manager reports. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. We have several on today, starting on item.
This is city manager reports.
I'm sorry, on city manager reports. I'm sorry. On this, we don't have anything other than the claims and payroll, and claims and payroll can be found on okc.gov, so no presentations.
All right, thank you. Item 6, Journal of Council Proceedings. Items A and B we can take with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Now we are at item 7, request for uncontested continuance.
All right. Starting on page 14, on 11N1, we have several items. All of these are stricken from the agenda. Item B, 2938 Southwest 10th Street, to re-notify for a new owner. Item D, 9716 Southeast 29th Street, the owner is removed. Continuing on page 15, unsecured structures, item 1101. Item I, 3044 Southwest 11th Street, the owner is secured. Item N, 926 Northwest 23rd Street, the owner is secured. Item N, 928 Northwest 23rd Street, the owner is secured. Item O, 1718 Northeast 24th Street, the owner is secured. Item P, 530 Southeast 27th Street, the owner has secured. Item Q, 1443 Northwest 29th Street, the owner has secured. Item R, 1101 Southwest 46th Street, the owner is occupied. And then item S, 1121 Northwest 47th Street, the owner has secured. Continuing on page 15, item 11P1, abandoned buildings. All of these again are stricken from the agenda. Item G, 2938 Southwest 10th Street, to re-notify for a new owner. Item I, 926 Northwest 23rd Street, the owner is secured. Item J, 928 Northwest 23rd Street, the owner is secured. Item K, 1718 Northeast 24th Street, the owner is secured. Item L, 530 Southeast 27th Street, the owner is secured. Item M, 1443 Northwest 29th Street, the owner is secured. Item N, 9716 Southeast 29th Street, the owner is removed. Item O, 1101 Southwest 46th Street, owner occupied. And then item P, 1121 Northwest 47th Street, the owner has secured. And that's all the items we have.
All right, thank you. Item 8, revocable permits and events. Item 8A is a revocable permit with Oklahoma Citizen Advocates for Recovery and Transformation Association for the Ocarta Annual Recovery Walk on September 14th in Edwards Park. And we have Veronica Woods signed up to speak.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So this is our 23rd annual walk. We usually had it at Washington Park, and then we decided to move it to Edwards Park because Washington Park was booked up. What we do is just celebrate recovery for either substance use and mental health, and we just bring awareness. Usually we walk to the Capitol and walk back and just have food and just have a whole bunch of vendors out there just to bring awareness and give resources. This year we'll just be walking around the pond that's at Edwards Park and have like a remembrance wall for people who have that we have lost to substance use or mental health. And we're still going to have like a kids area where there'll be bounce houses and face painting, and then we'll have free food that we will be providing and just time together and just showing that we do recover and that we matter.
Thank you. Councilwoman Nice?
Thank you. What time does the walk start?
We will kick off the walk, everybody will be setting up at 9, but the actual walking will start at 10.
All right. That was good to know for folks that want to participate and know what time to come.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Look forward to you all having a great event and remembering those that have been a part of recovery and transformation. So thank you so much for having us at Edwards Park, and I will move for approval.
Yes, thank you.
Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we have item 8B, a revocable permit with the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation for the OKC More Than Pink Walk on October 19th. And we have Alyssa Pope here to speak.
Good morning, everyone. As we approach year 31 here in Oklahoma City for the Susan G. Komen More Than Pink Walk, just again, as we've always done, bringing together our supporters, survivors, advocates to raise much-needed funds and awareness to breast cancer here in Oklahoma. This year alone, over 3,400 women and men will be diagnosed with breast cancer, and over 400 will die from the disease. And as always, you know, our event here in the city has provided so much to our community. This year already alone, we've given over $100,000 to over 100 people who are currently going through breast cancer today. And then the other thing for this year, it's been a while, but we have every healthcare system in our city that will be represented at the walk this year. So pretty exciting, and it's October the 19th, and we'll set up on Friday, walk on Saturday, hopefully a glorious day. But yeah, so that's about it for us.
Great, thank you. Councilwoman Hammond?
Well, it sounds like a wonderful time, and I'm happy to move for approval.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, item 8C is a revocable permit with the River Sport Foundation for the Oklahoma Regatta Festival and Head of the Oklahoma. That's on October 4th through the 6th. Item D is the annual Oklahoma River firework permit. And item E is a limited revocable rowing and paddle practice use permit with the River Sport Foundation. We have Tricia Downey here to speak on all three, and I just went ahead and introduced them that way in case you wanted to just roll through all three.
We'll go through all of them for sure. Good morning. I'm Tricia Downey. I'm the National Events Manager at River Sport. October 4, 5, and 6, we will be celebrating our Oklahoma Regatta Festival. Friday, the first day, we're actually having a ribbon cutting ceremony for the brand new bike park, the trailhead that meets the north side of the river bike trails. I've heard from pros that this is going to be one of the elite places to bike and best not only in the city, the state, but in the nation. We've heard many awesome reviews so far, so we're excited to cut that ribbon on Friday morning. In the evening, starting 4 o'clock, we'll start with our night sprints. I don't know if you all know, but our river is only river in the nation that has stadium lighting. So when we offer a night sprints race, that is one registration that gets filled up immediately because people are left out. It's just something super special for all rowers to participate in. Saturday, starting at 8 a.m., we're going to begin the Head of the Oklahoma race. A head race is something that is done across the country, head of the Charleston, head of it's called the Hooch, but I forget what city it was in. It's a 2,000-meter race. It starts way north on the river and finishes in front of River Sport. We're actually shutting down the sides of Lincoln Boulevard, just the outside streets, and putting up tents so people can actually watch from the river on both sides, leaving the 2 middle lanes open. It'll be open, but it's still an exciting view. And Saturday evening, again, 6 to 10 would be night sprints. Sunday, we will finish off the Head of the Oklahoma River racing. Then we switch to our Whitewater Center and do an event called Paddle Mania. We do tug of war with rafts. There is a race down the Whitewater in rafts and kayaks and canoes. We do a build your own boat, which is always entertaining because no boats generally make it down, and that's fun to see people fall in. And just a trick event in canoes. It's a pretty entertaining show. Both Saturday and Friday evening, we're doing fireworks, and that is the gist of the Oklahoma Regatta Festival. The other item on my list here is the annual fireworks permit. An annual fireworks permit allows us to have 7 fireworks shot off throughout the year without coming to see you every single time. You're going to see me towards the end of the year actually requesting more because River Sport does more than that, but we are happy to pay a little bit up front to save some money throughout the year. And River Sport I love the fireworks. What a venue over the river with the reflection. The third item is our practice permit. A practice permit allows us to practice our rowing, and we are a high-performance Olympic and Paralympic site. So it's kind of necessary to have a clear path and not have like a fishing boat out or someone having canoes out there just for fun when we're really concentrating on doing high speeds. It's a safety issue for us, and we do appreciate that you keep renewing this year after year after year. And those are the 3 items today. Any questions?
Well, thank you, Councilwoman Nice.
Well, if you didn't have a weekend planned, it was just planned for you for this. And I'll say, to your point, I agree. Anytime you have the fireworks over the river, they look spectacular. So I love, that's my favorite part as well. With all of the things going on, they are going to be adventurous, so please make plans to attend. And with at least C, D, and E, I'll move for approval for each one individually.
All right, we'll start with item C. We've got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously, and then we'll bring up item D, the firework permit. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And now we'll bring up item E, the practice use permit. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, 8F is a joint revocable permit with the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust and the Life Share Foundation to hold the Little Red Heart Run Walk Social at Lake Hefner on September 21st. And we have Caitlin Burks here signed up to speak.
Good morning. The Little Red Heart Run, Walk, and Social is an opportunity for the entire community to come together, celebrate life, honor donor heroes, and inspire hope for those awaiting a life-saving transplant. We are super excited to be hosting this event at Stars and Stripes Park off of Lake Hefner. Registration will open at 7:30 a.m. on Saturday, September 21st, and the race will kick off at 9 a.m. We'll have different mascots coming to celebrate. We'll have a kids zone for the kids to hang out, and it's really just a time to celebrate the gift of life that our donor heroes offer.
All right, thank you. This affects wards 1, 2, and 8, so I don't know. Anybody want to jump in?
This sounds like a great event. I look forward to it, and at this time, I'll move for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your, now we do. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, now we'll recess the council meeting and convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. We have items A through H. Staff is not requesting an executive session on G2, so we could take these with one motion.
Excuse me.
A motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Now we'll adjourn OCMFA and convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority. We only have claims and payroll, but we'll go ahead and vote on that. Item A. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, we'll adjourn OCPPA and reconvene as the council. We are now on item 9, the consent docket. We do have scheduled presentations on items AW, BC, BE, and BH. Is there anything else that a council member wishes to pull out for a separate vote, comment, question?
I'd like to vote separately on item A.
Item A, okay.
Mayor,
Mm-hmm.
item BE, if we could hear a bit about that.
Did you say BE?
BE.
We actually have a presentation on that.
Okay, and you said BC, we have one?
BC and BE, yes.
Wow, great.
Yes, I'd like to hear more about AB as in boy, AC, and AE.
AB, AC, and AE.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take them in order then, which means we'll start with the separate vote on item 9A. We can take a motion on that. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes 7-1. And then next up is item AB. Councilwoman Nice.
Yes, just wanted to get some more information pertaining to this execution for registered nomination report, as well as the next one, which is also a registered nomination report of these historic buildings, areas.
Yes, Katie Friddle, Planning Department staff to the Historic Preservation Commission. So we had 2 National Register nominations that came through for our review over the past month. Let me see which one is which. So Classon's North Highland Park is a neighborhood, and that is a National Register district nomination that we pursued as part of our Certified Local Government grant, this previous grant cycle. So we worked with Neighborhood Association, residents of the neighborhood, worked with the State Historic Preservation Office to first survey the neighborhood and then prepare the National Register nomination, and went to the HP Commission last week actually, for their recommendation, and is before you all for a recommendation that will then go on to the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service to be listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The other nomination is for the Haywood Estate. This one was initiated by the property owners. They're actually descendants of Dr. Haywood. They are not pursuing historic tax credits. They just wanted the property to be documented and recognized for its historic significance. So that one was prepared actually by State Historic Preservation Office staff in partnership with the property owners. They have a lot of great archival materials on Dr. Haywood and Mrs. Haywood, and came to the Historic Preservation Commission for their recommendation last week, and now continuing through the process for you all.
Now, I'm very excited about that, and just a little historic background for some of us in the room. Dr. Haywood was one of our first African-American doctors to open his practice. And if you have visited Deep Deuce Grill, that is his building, one of his original buildings, the Haywood Building, and you'll see that written on the building itself. So that is very exciting. And also, we got your email. Would you add me to that list for that?
Yes, sure.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, did that cover A, B, A, C, and AE? Not AE. Okay, so item AE.
Just wanted to get some background. I know a lot of people have been asking about more lighting and the plans, so just wanted to get an update on that, please.
Good morning, Council. My name is Mike Clark. I'm from the Public Works Department. This project is MP 0629. It seeks to improve the lighting on the lower Bricktown Canal, as was the lighting on the upper canal improved recently as well. It utilizes a combination of ARPA funding and capital improvement funding. It will install fixtures that are similar to those used on the upper canal. It will utilize the same control system as the upper canal. It will use some accent lighting for landscaping and wall packs under the pedestrian bridges. Construction could start as early as fall of this year and would be expected to finish in fall of 2025.
All right, next up is item AW. Is a presentation for this item?
Yes, Kenny Soodle with the Alliance for Economic Development will give us a presentation on this new allocation, or introduce this new allocation for funding in the new Classen Corridor TIF.
Good morning, Kenny Soodle with the Alliance. Excited to bring, this is the first project that's being brought forward from the new Classen Corridor TIF that was approved a little while back. So just very quickly, I'm going to give a super brief overview and then turn it over to the developers to do a brief presentation. This is a apartment building, 300 plus units. It's about an $81 million development. The incentive that's being proposed is a pay-as-you-go incentive that we would be doing 100% of the TIF for years 1 through 5. It would drop down to 85% for the 6th year, and the 7th through 15 year is 75%. This would be not to exceed $10,775,000. This is a property on Hudson, kind of between 8th and 9th Street and Walker. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Richard McCown and his team to go through this, and then be happy to answer any other questions after that.
Good morning. Richard McCown, 1605 North Classen. Happy to be here today, and want to introduce my business partners, Cooper Scott and Kara Llewellyn. We're going to tell you as quick as we can about this project, and it's something we've been working on for a number of years. So some of the background on this, here are 4 projects we've created downtown over the past 14 years, working down here that are relevant to this. I guess in the name of, or the interest of getting through this quickly, let's go on to the next slide to tell you where this is located. We're right in the heart of Midtown, located between 8th and 9th and Hudson and Walker. We're sort of wrapping around the Jimmy's Egg building and the modern Banh Mi. When we put this under contract way back in 2015, we were trying to take the whole entire site, and it was just a little too big. Today, it's just the right size. So let's tell you a little bit more about it. As we've designed it to fit within the neighborhood, we've added some live work units. These are new to our product that we haven't built before with Level or Mosaic. We're excited to bring those to the market. It's got a 2-story community amenity building, which will have some fantastic views looking back toward downtown, as well as down into our courtyards. We'll have our pool and gardens. And one thing that's really exciting about this, I'll show you in one of the renderings, is every single apartment that touches the ground on the outside has a walkout condition. And that's really an important aspect to creating walkability and making one of these buildings do the hard work of being a good urban building, very much, you know, in the spirit of these live work units. We're also adding an additional, I believe it's 44 on-street parking spaces, and those really add to the total vitality of the neighborhood. You can see it's got a big parking garage in the middle of it that will do a lot for the neighborhood. Okay, I'm gonna let Cooper tell you a little bit about the units.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. So we've been managing product in downtown Oklahoma City for the past 10 years, and we've kind of gotten a good sense on what a good mix of units would be, weighing heavily on the 1-bed units, and then about 30 to 35% in the 2-bed mix seems to be our most popular setup. So in this building, we tried to incorporate some smaller units, 13 studio-size units at 550 square feet, about 196 1-beds, 91 2-beds, and then 3 of the live work units, as Richard mentioned. And that's a total of around 303 units. And our rent right now is about $2.15 per foot. And we'll go to the next slide. And then just a brief overview of our timeline. Obviously, we're in here working through this process. We'll continue to work on the alley closure. Our construction drawings will wrap up kind of May of next year. Then we hope to close our HUD loan shortly after that in July and begin construction, completing in October of 2027. Then we would envision the lease up taking through about August of 2028. Next slide. I'll turn it back to Richard real quick to talk about the renderings.
So here you can see this is a view from 9th and Hudson, looking to the south and back southwest. You can see these ground floor apartments. You can also see every single apartment has a balcony. That outdoor amenity has been a really important part in other buildings we've built downtown. But the thing that I'm the most excited about is the way the building touches the ground. And then you can see the 3 live work units, and then we've created a very much, you know, retail focus to our amenity series. And I could talk about this all day, but in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and go on to the next slide and tell you some of our site challenges. So the site looks kind of flat when you're over there, but it's actually got 13 foot of elevation change. And that is going to cause us to have to make some of these ground floor apartments have 18-foot tall ceilings in order to stretch the legs of the building down to touch the sidewalk. That's a significant expense. We're also facing relocating Cox Communication and AT&T both have major fiber optic infrastructure in the alleyway. building can't be built without relocating that and closing the alley. And so this is something, you know, we could see the overhead power lines that we were going to have to put underground, or relocate and put underground. We didn't know about the Cox lines. When we were there with their staff, they said, you know, you could have been 7 blocks to the south. You wouldn't have run into anything like this on any of these alleys. Could have gone north, nothing like this. It's our understanding most of this is the infrastructure serving St. Anthony's. And it's just really important to get that fiber optic relocated. And unfortunately, you can't just stretch it. It's got to be rebuilt at significant expense. So we're also facing a very high interest rate environment, as well as construction costs have just continued to escalate and escalate and escalate. So all of that said, you know, and of course it's an urban building with all the expense and challenges of an urban building. And that brings us to kind of the TIF ask, and I'll let Cooper walk you through the numbers.
Sure. And again, in the interest of time, we'll kind of just click all the highlights of this, but you know, for our sources, we envision about the 56 million mark for loan proceeds. We think we can have about $900,000 in contributed land equity, leaving about $24 million left as an equity contribution. And then we just try to highlight the cost of the land, construction cost, fees, some carrying costs, and a construction contingency. And really on the right side of the screen is kind of the best. That's the best illustration of what the model ends up being. Is without the TIF assistance on a 10-year average, we're around 4.5%. 15 years, you stress that out to 5.5%, but you know, that's just the average over that time. And of course, you can get that 5% right now, kind of risk-free in your savings accounts, the way the economy stands. So to really draw that investor market out there with the TIF assistance, we do get it up around the 7.5%, 8.5% range over that time. And it really starts to move this project along. And then the TIF request, just the highlights, receiving 100% ad valorem increments that the property would generate from years 1 through 5, and then stepping down to 85% year 6, and then 75% thereafter until year 15. And that is also meant to help start generating some more TIF income to this district. And with that, thank you guys for your time, and more than happy to take any questions that y'all may have.
Okay, thank you. All right, next up for a presentation is item BC.
Yeah, so David Todd will introduce item BC and then also with BE here in just a minute. Thank you.
Good morning, David Todd, MAPS Program Manager. We have today our first set of bike lanes through MAPS 4. We have final plans coming. Our consultant, Josh Malwick with Consor Engineers, is going to take you through what all's in that set of plans.
Good morning. Thank you, Josh Malwick with Consor Engineers. We'll run through the Phase 1B final plans presentation for the MAPS 4 bike lanes. The first bike lanes that we're going to do are going to be Classen Boulevard from Grand up to Britton Road. That'll be the north crosstown connection, and then Northeast 16th from Walnut over to Bryant being the east project. The project goals were to add bike facilities to existing roadways, provide connections between the north and the east part of the Oklahoma City to the downtown bike infrastructure, and then focus on enhancing the cyclist safety. Highlights for the Classen Boulevard were we're going to add 5-foot bike lanes with a 5-foot buffer. It's going to be a Tier 1 facility with roughly 1,200 delineators. We'll repair any of the damaged pavement within the bike lane footprint, and then update the signal detection at Chesapeake Drive. We did have to make some adjustments to what Bike Walk had shown in the original plan. The first one is at the roundabout at the Chesapeake campus. We do have to stop the bike lane before we get to the roundabout. We can't carry the bike lane through the roundabout itself. And then at Wilshire Boulevard, we will stop the bike lane for northbound and southbound as we go to Wilshire to make that transition across the railroad tracks right there. The Classen Boulevard highlights, well, we went backwards. 1 second, we're going the wrong way. Why is it going backwards, Carrie? There we go. Okay, sorry. The Northeast 16th highlights, we'll be updating the pavement markings. There's already some existing pavement markings out there, so we'll put out the new Sharrow as shown in the standards. We'll be adding the bike lane signs or the bike facility signs, whichever is appropriate for that current situation. We'll be adding a bike lane between Lottie and Martin Luther King Boulevard. We did upgrade that to a Tier 1 facility, so it will be a protected bike lane with roughly 300 delineators added. And then we will update the signal detection at Lottie Avenue. The revised, we did have to do some revisions on here as well. However, the new bike walk does reflect what we've actually got shown. So we will be reducing the Tier 1 facility to between Lottie and Martin Luther King. Previously, it did go from Kelly to I-35, but we just don't have the available space right now to be able to do that. We extended the project to Bryant Avenue, adding about a half a mile of shared facility. And then in that bottom picture, you can see we did have a center median across Lindsay Avenue. We will be adding 8-foot paths that will be pedestrian and bike accessible across the center median. The project schedule, we've been to the subcommittee and CAB last week. We're here today to get your approval. We plan to bid in the next couple weeks and then award and begin construction in October with wrapping up the construction next spring. The budget and construction costs, we had the budget set at $3.5 million. The base bid estimate came in around $2 million, with the base bid and an ad alternate at $2.4 million. The public information website's been pretty successful. We've had about 500 hits to the website and about 200 downloads of the fact sheets for what each project are. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
When I leave the Paseo and take 30th Street to Villa, like so heading west, and then I turn south onto Villa, where the new bike infrastructure is, these delineators, right, where we reduced what were multiple lanes to now add this Tier 1 bike infrastructure. What I see there is something I see fairly commonly where we've put in bike infrastructure near an intersection, which is the first 2 or 3 of those delineators knocked down, right? And so one must ask themselves, what is going on here, especially when one sees this repeatedly. It's not a one-off. My guess, is it's the turn itself of the person in the vehicle that maybe because the infrastructure is new, I'm not sure, that they're not used to those first 2 or 3 delineators, so they go into it, or we're a city that loves its fast and the furious vehicles, so we go really fast on the road, not realizing what infrastructure is there. I bring this up because that strikes me that we need to rethink at the intersections where these delineators are going in, the bike infrastructure. Let me also just say, I see one of my fellow colleagues over there nodding their head about this, and I've said this to him. I understand the bike delineators. I've seen them in other cities. They are not my favorite. They're good. My city manager is nodding his head too. I don't like them. I don't. And I don't like them because I've seen them. There's 2 big reasons. I've seen in other cities, we are a top 20 city now. Let's just be very clear the game we're playing. We are top 26 fastest growing. When I see other cities that are in the top 20, like Seattle, et cetera, I see beautiful, beautiful concrete planters as bike lanes. So the first goal is beautification, right? The second thing is safety, the literal safety of the person on the bike, to say nothing of the individual who might hit the person riding the bike by making that turn in a way that they shouldn't have, right? What trauma does that do to them? So I have brought this up before many times. I brought it up when I was the city council person serving on the Maps for Citizens Advisory Committee. I have brought it up from this horseshoe previously. I brought it up to our city manager. I brought it up to several of my colleagues. I'm still not seeing where in MAPS 4 we're experimenting with doing a best practice from other municipalities who are in the top 20 with us. Why is that is my first question. And if we say it's cost, then I would challenge us, how much do the replacements of these delineators cost? Because this is not a one-off. I just can't stress this enough, right? And so that's my first question is why here are, I see, what was it, like 1,600 delineators or some number? Why here is there no consideration for those planters?
I'd like to address that. So, you know, the planters take an additional, what, 3 to 4 feet? Is that what we would guess those widths are? And a lot of these instances, like Josh's project here, we're taking an existing street and squeezing these bike lanes in and trying to keep traffic lanes in there. So that's another 3 or 4 feet that it robs and is difficult to get in there. Also, we struggle constantly, and you'll see that with some other projects as we go along, of maintenance. So if you have a planter and you plant plants in there, who takes care of that? Who waters it? Who maintains that? And we struggled all the time to find people who are willing to step up with that. That's the first two things just off the top of my head.
Yeah, and I would say too that one thing I agree with you with some of the challenges with those delineators, that we always want to be looking at what we can do differently, and there are different applications that we can make on the delineators. I do agree that, you know, the issue right now with the planters, you know, taking more space, so it'd be more right-of-way that you need, but also the maintenance long-term, I think, as David mentioned, is really an issue that we try to manage. Also, I think it's cost in terms of, like, with these projects, they have a limited budget, and so it would likely end up, if you were able to put planters and we had ways that we could maintain that, we would have fewer miles of bike lanes that we would be putting in as a result of the additional cost. And so those are some of the effects that are there. I don't think that means that we just give in and say, hey, this is just all we have as an option. I think there are other options, again, trying to look at the maintenance cost overall, whether it's replacing delineators or it's maintaining planters, looking at all those costs as well as just the appearance of it. I think all of those things are things we have to keep in front of us to continue to evaluate what options we might have.
I hear you. Can you share my screen, please? Good. This is what I am talking about. I want to be very clear so the public who's not used to seeing them in our city can see them for themselves. Otherwise, we're talking about abstracts. I want you to see actual, tangible examples in other cities. That's not the width that you just heard from the MAPS 4 director. We need to be inventive here. Do you see that these come in different shapes and sizes? Do you see it with your own eyes? Because I do, and that's my challenge back to the city of OKC. There are multiple types of these planters. You see that, you see it here, you see it here, you see it here, you see it there. Like, there are different options, and when we look at our own, I know, was something bad? Something bad?
Yeah, drop that one.
Oh, God. Well, sure. No.
No, it shows that one that was hit into
The one that's bad? No, but that's fine. No, we should not be afraid to hide from something being removed like that. Absolutely not. I'm not afraid of that. We have to be experimenting here and figuring out what the best practice here is. I'm not afraid of seeing when something doesn't work. You try again. Yeah, oh, I'm so glad you did that, Todd. Like, no, if something's bad where it's not working, where was it? Right there. Yeah, if something's been hit, then you got to figure out what the remedy is. That's fine. That's science. That's experimentation. We should not be afraid of seeing when something doesn't work. And y'all know I'm one of the biggest bike advocates up here, right? I am literally taking a risk by pointing out that these delineators in my own ward at Villa and 30th aren't entirely working. And I don't mind pointing out when something isn't entirely working because that presents a challenge. And I just think that's great because Oklahoma City has a known track record of stepping up and when a challenge is in front of them.
And I think to your point,
You can take down my screen.
that it's not necessary, I don't think it necessarily has to be planters. To your point about like just trying different things, you know, I've seen and residents have sent me the sort of like parking curb, concrete blocks that you could put kind of at key points that provide a little bit more barrier on the ground, maybe not as much vertically, that's something that is more substantial. But even things like, you know, they don't even have to be planters, they could be like decorated blocks, or I've seen like kind of the large globe sort of pieces that don't require that ongoing maintenance as far as watering, tending, et cetera. And I know with the new bike walk update, there was some of this like, we need to be thinking about these, and so I don't know if I necessarily expect them to be in these first rounds of bike projects, but I would be interested in seeing how we can be incorporating these, because these other cities, Councilman Cooper, that you mentioned, they're also working with an existing right-of-way. They're not doing huge curb changes, as you could see on some of those photos. They're kind of working within the boundaries they have, which I would argue are probably a lot more confined than ours, because we tend to have such large lanes and right-of-ways, that I think, yeah, opportunities, I think, to be creative. I appreciate you sort of calling that out, because I think it is some trial and error that we have to be willing to admit, okay, maybe this doesn't work right here, but this could work. It's not that it won't work over in this other project in this other area. So yeah, I just say that to sort of second it, and also maybe introduce a few other ideas or options that maybe can address some of the sort of maintenance concerns, because I know that is a frustration, and it is just difficult to find those partners, or we're not typically interested in sort of allocating that money to do that ongoing maintenance. So appreciate that, Councilman Cooper.
Well, and thank you for that. And the only other thing I would add is they do not have to have flowers in them. You have mural artists all across the city who would paint you some flowers on these boxes. Like, and I've said, and here's the other thing too, this is the kind of slightly frustrating part. I've said what I just said previously. That's my challenge back, is like, at some point, meet us where we are with these different recommendations and come back to us, not with the same old tired excuse of the cost and the maintenance and the width. We've heard that argument already. So now figure out how to rethink that argument. Like, just parroting that back to me, it makes me feel like you're not listening to the things I've said previously. And there's a public record of the things I've said. So I pulled up that screen for a reason, and I now would even took that risk. And I don't mind. I do not mind. I do not mind. But come back and show us the pros and cons of these different approaches, and let's start experimenting a little bit more. But as we head into this beautification conversation in a couple minutes, I can't stress to you enough, you have people who are resistant to bike lanes. They don't understand why we have them, why we would build them. And these are the same people who are arguing that the city needs to increase its beautification efforts. So let's give them something beautiful and new. That's my challenge back. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to BE.
So switching to sidewalks, currently we have sidewalks, in case you didn't know, we have sidewalks under construction. We have another package that will go to the subcommittee in the next meeting in October already. But this is preliminary report for the next after that. So Brett Cabnis from Garver is here to go through real quickly where those sidewalks will be located.
Good morning, Mayor, Council, and staff. Brett Cabnis, Senior Project Manager with Garver. We are here today to talk a little bit about the preliminary engineering report for the next round of sidewalks that follow the intent of the Bike Walk Oklahoma City Master Plan. This is the first of two phases under the Phase 2. We call this Phase 2A for a reason. 3 areas in northwest Oklahoma City, you see highlighted on the screen above. And we'll talk a little bit more about those in detail. Lyrewood, Northwest Expressway, and the May Avenue and 63rd areas. Project goals is to create a more walkable community, connect people and places, and then improve pedestrian safety. And the budget's about $3.8 million for this. So the first area, let's talk about Lyrewood. It will be bounded between Wilshire Boulevard and Northwest 63rd along Lyrewood. It's about 1.25 miles worth of new sidewalk infrastructure, follows the bike walk recommendations. The connectivity here is very important. A lot of multifamily neighborhoods connect along Lyrewood. We have commercial areas at Wilshire and at 63rd. But really, we have two other components that are very critical here. Two Lakes Elementary School, and then there are 6 Embark bus stops along Lyrewood, and that's the connectivity that we're really looking for. Next is along Northwest Expressway, about 0.5 mile worth of sidewalks, bounded on 63rd and then up to Meridian along the south side of Northwest Expressway. Connection points here, Burt Cooper Trail, also commercial areas, but more importantly, this is an opportunity to connect to the new rapid bus transit station that sits on the north side of Northwest Expressway at Meridian. And then the last area that we're going to look at is generally in May Avenue and 63rd. We look at the neighborhood here, has many multifamilies and also residential areas through here, kind of called the Belle Isle area. And the reason being is you have Belle Isle Library, you have the Belle Isle Enterprise School, and then you have the Belle Isle Park in this location. So digging down a little bit deeper into the plan here, the connection along Lyrewood will be a 6-foot wide sidewalk that is on the back side of the curb along the east side of Lyrewood. Again, we will be improving the bus stop locations to tie into these new sidewalks. There is one little drainage structure that we will need to extend and repair to make this ADA compliant path between Wilshire and 63rd. Along Northwest Expressway, obviously a very high speed, high volume traffic. We propose another 6-foot wide sidewalk, but we're going to add a 2-foot buffer between the back of curb. We want to add that little bit of shy distance between the pedestrians and the traffic along Northwest Expressway. And then the last area is 63rd and May. The residential area through here, there were several connections to May Avenue at 62nd Street. We are proposing sidewalk on only one side of the street, which is a little bit of variance from the Bike Walk Oklahoma City plan. 5-foot sidewalk at the back of curbs. The area that we did add for some additional connectivity and ADA compliance was along Ross, in this area right through here down to Southwest 59th. And we added that for a reason, is there's an existing traffic signal and ADA compliant intersection at that location, whereas Bike Walk only had a connection to May Avenue at 62nd Street. The construction cost, preliminary construction cost, as you see, is about $3.5 million. The budget for this project is nearly $3.8 million, so we do have a little bit of a budget balance that we'll be working with as a contingency. And then the schedule for the project, we're here today in September, and you see there for approval, we will move on to 60% plans, where we would then identify any potential right-of-way needs, any utility conflicts, and work through those in the December area. Right-of-way acquisition, if we need any, our intent is to stay within the limits of the existing right-of-way. However, there are going to be some intersections in older neighborhoods that may not have site triangles that we'll need to address at that location there. Continue on to final plans, and then come back to MAP's presentation in spring of '25, bid in the spring and summer of '25, and then construction starting in the summer of '25. Now, we are probably a little conservative in our construction time frame here of 10 months. Reason being is we'll be going through some neighborhoods, tearing up people's driveways and replacing that. That takes a little bit of time because we do want to coordinate with businesses and the residents to make sure that they are accommodated the best they can be during construction. And with that, be happy to take any questions.
Would you mind going back to the expressway and Villa area, May? Actually, the next. Okay, yeah, first.
I'm sorry.
Are you saying? Oh, sorry. The May Avenue and Villa. Thank you. When you say sidewalk proposed on one side of the street, is that everywhere? Is that just one part? Where are you saying that?
Generally, right now, we're on one, to meet the intent of bike walk plan was for these areas that we have highlighted in red to have sidewalk. Budget constraints put us that we needed to only do one side of the street at this point in time.
From 63rd to Expressway, from May to Villa, all of these are just going to be one side of the street. Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm sorry, yes.
This whole square, just one side?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that is a little concerning. When you're doing that one side of the street, to what extent are you thinking of the connectivity from, if I'm just doing the one side of the street, for instance, on Miller, that one side is connecting to the one side on 59th, et cetera? I'm guessing that level of thought has gone in here?
At the intersections, we will make sure that intersections have ADA compliant ramps. I understand the concern of, somebody lives on the south side and we have a sidewalk on the north side. How do they get to that point? Generally, they will have to walk across residential street to that side of the street.
Can I mean, this isn't necessarily the place for it, but I would like from planning like a sit-down detail of these connections, like how people are getting across the street. These are concerns, this isn't something that I'm just bringing up. These are concerns I hear from residents when we put in these sidewalks. Let me go back. This is a concern I heard from a family who lives in Putnam Heights about their child having to cross the street where there's no sidewalk. I want to be very clear. This is not, this is a resident that
Yes.
I'm amplifying their voices here. So, there's Belle Isle School right here at Villa. So just as an example, what side of the street are you all putting the sidewalk on Villa?
Yeah, along Villa, there are some sidewalks currently on the east side of the street, particularly around the school area. And then at, what is that, 58th, 57th? There is some new sidewalk already in some of these subdivisions or some of these areas as well. To meet the intent of Bike Walk OKC is that connectivity. And you see along the west side of Villa, there is a school crossing at this location right here that was recently done.
Yeah, I'd like to sit down with you all to better understand where these connections are going to go in terms of the park, the school, all of it, because these are the sorts of things that I get asked, not just asked, drilled when I go to Belle Isle Library and meet with their neighborhood association. And there were already concerns about existing just putting in on one side of the street. I just can't stress enough, these are like families, right? They're with their children, and that's why they drill me on these sorts of things. So that would be helpful. Let me also just say, it would have been helpful had this come to me before the city council, like being able to sit down with me as the council person to walk through what these plans are. Like, I participated in Bike Walk, right? I was one of the stakeholders. So in a lot of ways, I thought the work was done, but then in a council packet that is this thick, right, to then get the new update saying, well, but you're only gonna do them on one side, right? Well, I have residents asking me about the very particular details of where these are going, and Villa has been a priority for this neighborhood for a long time. So my challenge back to the city manager is there has got to be, when I give you all what my priorities are as a council person when it comes to walkability and bike infrastructure and public transportation, there needs to be, and I've already requested it, it's not happening. There needs to be regular, ongoing updates on this work. This is my work. This is my work with residents. And then instead I get surprised on the horseshoe. That's frustrating to me. It's frustrating, and here's what's wild about what I am saying. At the same time, I love that this is happening. Like, I love that these sidewalks are going in here. I love that these bike lanes are going in here. Like, this is great work, but there needs to be a bit more of a open communication ahead of time. I don't know about the rest of the council members. I'm speaking specifically for me. I want that communication. I want it regularly. I want it ongoingly so that I can then turn to my residents and communicate back to them about the good things that we're doing and when those limitations are there. So, yeah. And then could you go to Northwest Expressway, please? So, this is another one of those areas I'm very excited about, and I'm glad you all are thinking about that buffer area for the pedestrian. But we just secured a grant, as some of you are aware, for a bunch of trees to go along the BRT route. This is an opportunity to put trees as a buffer for the residents between themselves on the new sidewalk and 6 lanes of Northwest Expressway traffic. But so far, that coordination has not happened here. And my worry is it would not have happened had I not brought the people together at the city staff level. So it gets frustrating, especially when I know we're doing good work. Like, that's the problem, so, okay, I'm just gonna leave it at that.
I'd like to add that anytime you want to come down to Ward 5 and put a sidewalk on one side of a major thoroughfare or the other, I'm all for it. Whatever you want to do, anytime, I'll meet you out there. I'll bring a shovel, and we can build sidewalks down 119th or 104th or 134th, where we have thousands of kids walking a day with no sidewalks.
Understood.
If that is a little playful fun, then we cannot pit these things against each other. If that's, they
You do all the time, Cooper.
No, I have never. In fact, the sidewalks you all are getting on the south side are the result of maps for sidewalk, bikes, trails, and streetlight project that I helped create, that I made sure the pedestrian priority areas on the south side were there. No, my frustration, Councilman, is that since World War II, we stopped funding these things. It wasn't until '07 that we started funding them again. And so I just feel like I'm playing catch up all the time, and I'm having to explain to my residents that game of catch up. And then simultaneously, I hear you, this, it's not right and it's not fair how long and how little sidewalk infrastructure on the south side has been. I hear you, I do. It's why I keep saying up here that we've got to be thinking about in the next bond how we can stretch that dollar even more for both of us. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And City Manager, I think you just wanted to say a word about item BH. I don't know that it's a full presentation.
Right. On BH, I just wanted to recognize the Arnold Foundation, Diversion Hub, and just appreciate the work that they've done. They've been such great partners with us going through this project, donating the land, and now you see the donation that's on here now of almost $900,000 to be able to complete and do some of the additional projects or parts of the project that are needed for Diversion Hub and being able to fund the alternates. And so I just wanted to recognize them and just express our appreciation for their partnership and their generosity and their contributions to the community. So thank you all.
I was going to make the same thank you. It was very, very important to us.
Yes. Yeah, this happened because the bids came in too high to do the alternates, and so the Arnold Family Foundation made up the difference.
That's right.
And, you know, we've really never had the chance to say this on the Horseshoe, but since that foundation and Sue Ann Arnall stood at that podium during the MAPS 4 process and talked about doing a $20 million donation to the endowment to operate the diversion hub, they have since doubled that endowment. They don't seek attention for that, but that $20 million commitment was pretty persuasive to us, and including diversion hub as a project, and since then that endowment has doubled thanks to their generosity. So it's really incredible. Thank you to the foundation, thanks to Sue Ann, and thanks to all the work you guys do at the diversion hub. Okay, well that concludes our items that have been pulled out on item 9, and we can now adopt the consent docket. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, item 10 is the concurrence docket. We can take items A through J with one motion. Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, item 11, items for individual consideration. Item 11A is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval, rezoning 7200 North Santa Fe Avenue from R1 to AA. This was deferred July 30th and August 27th. Councilwoman Nice, one person has signed up to speak in opposition.
Okay. Is the applicant here? The applicant? Well, if you don't mind, I'll take care of this. You don't even have to say anything. I've asked, the last time this came before us, I asked you all if we could defer this because I wanted to ensure that I had conversations with the applicant for this application. And currently, at that stage, when I spoke with you all as well, there are some violations of R1 that have not been completed and taken care of for them to, in my opinion, fully address their wish to change and rezone to AA. We're still waiting for that to happen, and I advised them at that meeting that I needed them to have that done by our first meeting in September, and they told me they would, and to my knowledge, it has not been completed, and I do not see Mr. Chad, is he here today? Okay, just wanted to triple check that, but I'm not sure where he is. That's fine.
We'll see if we can get him.
Yeah, if we just want him to clarify what I have said as far as that property is concerned. But with that, while we wait for him, I do want you all to know that I am going to ask that we deny this application based on what concerns already exist with this property. But again, I did want to just confirm with Chad before I did that for you all to have. So if we want to come, maybe.
You want to hold it until, see if it comes in?
Yeah, no
Okay.
problem.
All right, we can come back to that.
Thank you.
Item B is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval, rezoning 2237 Southwest 149th from AA to PUD 2021. Councilman Hinkle, no one assigned to speak.
I'll move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Now back to item A. Councilwoman Nice.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Chad, will you help confirm what I have just said as far as this property is concerned, that we still have concerns at 7200 North Santa Fe Avenue that we have not been able to address?
Sure. Chad Davidson, Code Enforcement Superintendent. Today, we have a reinspection actually scheduled for the inoperable vehicles that were on the property present, but we've also had to issue citation for some zoning issues, as well as issue a contract for removal of junk and debris.
When did you do that?
The citation was issued, I believe, last week, And then again, last week, we issued the contract.
All right, that's enough for me, you all. So I will ask that we deny this application. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right, so this is a motion to deny, and we have a motion and a second. So a yes vote is to deny the application. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, on item C now. This is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval, rezoning 15602 North MacArthur from R1 to PUD 2022. Councilman Stonecipher, no one has signed up to speak.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any protest, and Planning Commission recommended approval, so I'll move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item D is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval, rezoning 308 Northwest 164th from PUD 823 to PUD 2023. Councilwoman Nice, no one to sign up to speak.
I didn't have it highlighted. All right, the purpose of this is to allow the expansion of an existing facility as well as a school. Mr. Box? I don't think we talked about this one.
David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. You are correct. The purpose of this is to allow the expansion of the church, but also a school. If you look at the aerial, the area that is west of kind of the southernmost parking lot is where the school will go. Quad Construction is actually the one that will be building that. Worked with staff through the rezoning process. Prior to this, there was no issues at Planning Commission. Staff recommended approval.
All right, thank you for that. I will move for approval of this application request.
Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes.
Thank you.
Passed unanimously. Okay, item E is an ordinance on final hearing. It was recommended for approval, rezoning 11765 North Morgan Road from PUD 1872 to SPUD 1607. Councilman Carter, no one has signed up to speak.
Mark, this is just a cleanup. We had already approved one thing, right? Okay, you're good. So subject to the TEs, I'll move for approval.
Have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 11F is an ordinance on final hearing. It was recommended for approval, rezoning 17001 Northwestern from R1 to SPUD 1644. Councilman Stonecipher, no one has signed up to speak.
I'll move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, item G is an ordinance on final hearing that was recommended for approval, rezoning 1620 Northwest 29th from R1 to SPUD 1645. Councilman Cooper, no one has signed up to speak.
Is the applicant here or the representative? Come on up. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing in Ward 2.
Sam Gresham, Northwest, 400 Northwest 23rd Street. I'm suggesting, I'm building a second house on currently an R1 lot. I'd like to build two houses on that lot together. It's been unanimously approved by, recommended for approval by Planning Commission. And any more questions?
Well, I just wanted to thank you for taking time to talk with me on the phone.
Yes.
And you gave me some addresses of your work to go see, and I did, and it is impressive.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that in public. So I hope you continue doing these sorts of kind of more thoughtful projects in the ward. So I'll just move for approval.
Thank you.
I have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item H is an ordinance on final hearing recommended for approval. Rezoning 512 South Mustang Road from PUD 287 to SPUD 1648. Councilwoman Peck Nolan has signed up to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's see. There were no protests at Planning Commission either, and they recommended for approval. I've spoken with Mr. Box about the development, and I look forward to it. And so I will move for approval.
I have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item I is an ordinance on family hearing that was recommended for approval. Rezoning 1132 and 1201 Northwest 7th from R3 and SPUD 951 to SPUD 1649. Councilwoman Hammond Nolan has signed up to speak.
I'm happy to move for approval.
I have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item J is an ordinance on final hearing. It was recommended for approval, rezoning 3331 Southwest 104th from PUD 831 and AE1 to SPUD 1652 and AE1. Councilman Hinkle, no one is signed to speak.
I'll move for approval.
I have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item K is an ordinance on final hearing, amending the no parking anytime restriction on both sides of South Klein Avenue between Southwest 66th and Southwest 69th to a no parking anytime restriction on the east side of said street. Councilman Hinkle.
Nobody signed up?
Correct.
I'll move for approval.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, item L is an ordinance to be introduced, set for public hearing on September 24th and final hearing on October 8th. This is, as I understand it, a bit of a cleanup from a recent fee change that this council approved.
Yes.
Mr. City Manager, there's a presentation.
Yes, Chris York, our budget director, will give us a quick presentation and overview. I think we've sent out a notice to the council just to make you aware that there were just some cleanup language that we need to incorporate into this, but there were a couple of fees that were, one was repealed and another was added, so we wanted to go ahead and go through the process, and I'll let Chris just give you a quick update on these changes.
Yeah, thank you, City Manager. Chris York from the Budget Office. And so, as the Mayor and the City Manager indicated, this is a little bit of cleanup from the series that we brought you back in May. That was following a fee study where we went in and amended the Municipal Code, Chapter 60, specifically pertaining to fees for services that our residents and businesses pay. As we went to implement those changes in our procedures and our software systems, we started to notice some areas where the language really needed to be cleaned up because there was room for some ambiguity or some confusion. One of the most common types of changes we're making is the fee expiration dates. So what we did this last amendment was we tried to stagger those increases to benefit our residents and our business community so that they weren't absorbing the entire fee increase in 1 year. And what that did was it created some time frame. So year one, from this date to this date, it would be this fee and so on as we went out for a few years. At the end of the few years, we used some language that said at the end of this date, that would stop that new fee, right, for the third year, the final year. That really isn't best practice. What we wanted to do there is take that end date off because there is some ambiguity there that the resident might say, oh, what happens after that date? What is the fee at that point? So even though I feel confident we would bring this language back to you as we look at this fee every few years, we wanted to make sure that that this amendment stood on its own and read correctly. Another update that we were looking at was just some clarifications. An example would be with those staggered fee increases, for example, with fire inspections. If the inspection occurred during this time frame, but then we didn't bill you until this time frame, what is the fee going to be? And so we just amended that language to say, to specify specify that the fee you pay is based on when the actual inspection occurred. We also renamed a couple of sections for just clarity. An example of that would be the building and building regulation code. That's unnecessary. It's just the building code, for example. And the one that the city manager referenced, so we had added a new fee that was a abandoned building monitoring fee. And when staff looked at that, they determined that it was more aptly titled a trash abatement fee. So this occurs when a code inspector is at the property and they have to wait more than 3 hours for the trash folks to come and clean up that property. And so basically we have a staff member that's there all day. And that's when they would have to pay that fee. The fee amount that was in from the original building monitoring fee is the same as this new fee for trash abatement. But it's just been retitled and then moved to the more appropriate section. And that's it. And again, even though that's pretty much the same fee, we went ahead for the sake of transparency, went through the complete process with this. We want to make sure the residents have time to review this. And so you will see this on the subsequent couple council meetings. And so today is just the introduction, and then you'll see a couple more public hearings on it. That's all the updates that I have for you, but if you have questions, I'll be happy to try to answer those.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
If there's no questions, then we can take a vote to introduce the proposed ordinance change. All right, we might have to do this verbally.
So moved.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll. Cooper.
Oh, aye. Wait, what?
I heard you say something.
You say Cooper?
Didn't you say something?
I just said Barbara did. Barbara said.
Who's the second?
Moved it,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, that's what I said.
He was
Back
letting
in.
Amy know that you said
Oh, okay. I thought you were asking us to now vote again. I was like, okay.
No.
Ward
You were the
1,
second.
Aye.
Ward 2,
Aye.
Ward 3,
Aye.
Ward 4, Ward 5,
Aye.
Ward 6, Ward 7, Ward 8. Mayor Holt.
Aye. Passes unanimously. The ordinance is set for public hearing on September 24th and final hearing on October 8th. Okay, item M is a public hearing regarding an ordinance relating to drainage and flood control. This was previously discussed. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak on the public hearing?
No, they haven't.
Okay. Now we're at item N. This is a public hearing regarding the dilapidated structures here listed. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, they haven't.
Are there any questions, deferrals? If not, we can adopt the resolution found at N2 declaring that the structures are dilapidated. We've got a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Mark, have you voted? Yes. Okay. Passes unanimously. All right, 1101 is the public hearing regarding the unsecured structures here listed. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, they haven't.
They have not, so we will move to the resolution at 02 declaring that the structures are unsecured. A motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, 11P1 is a public hearing regarding the abandoned buildings here listed, except for those previously struck. Amy, has anyone signed up to speak?
No, they haven't.
They have not, and so we will advance to the resolution found at P2 declaring that the buildings are abandoned. I have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, 11Q is a master plan for the Maps for Park programming, and we have a presentation.
Yes, David Todd, our MAPS director, will give us an update. There's two master plans that are on here. One is on parks and the other one is on beautification related to the MAPS 4 project. So I'll let David introduce these items.
Hi, David Todd, Maps Program Manager again. What we have here is the Parks Master Plan, and I just want to commend Kimley Horn. I think they've done a fantastic job going through all of the parks and analyzing them and doing what they've done in this master plan. So Darren Scott is here from Kimley Horn. He's going to take us through as quickly as we can the way the master plan was created and some quick examples.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for allowing us to be here. Like David said, this was a fun project, a long project to look at all the neighborhood and community parks for the MAPS funding. So just quickly, the purpose of the project, in the resolution, it stated that we would assess, prioritize current and future opportunities based on current conditions, accessibility, community input, and potential expansion needs. So when we developed our criteria of how we were going to compare the parks, that's what we used. And then it also stated that every neighborhood and community park would receive upgrades with this project. So there's 105 of those across the city. So we broke this down into 4 phases. The first phase was the inventory needs assessment. So going out to every park, analyzing every component that was in that park and providing that assessment. With develop the recommendations off of that. During that same timeline, we also had a lot of community input. That all rolled into the master plan, and then we're here today in phase 4. So a little bit on the public engagement. This was an extensive public engagement approach. Is from an interactive website where residents could put stickers on an interactive map of improvements they would like to see in each of the parks. We had concrete stickers out in each of the parks where they could scan a QR code right there and then take the survey. We also had numerous community open houses all across the city, over 16 of those. We had pop-up community events, so we went to festivals, chamber events, pretty much anything that popped up, we were there to talk about this project, and then along with numerous stakeholder meetings as well. So a little bit on the scoring criteria. This will be a little briefer dive into this, but completeness of the park was one of the things we looked at, and then park conditions. So those were the 2 lenses we compared the parks as far as what was currently in there and how they would score. So a little bit on the park completeness. We looked at the neighborhood parks separate from the community parks, and based off the 2020 Parks Master Plan that was done previously, these were the recommended amenities that would fall into each of those, that should be in those parks. So neighborhood parks, there were several amenities, and then community parks had a different set of criteria. With that, we put weight to it. So in a neighborhood park, you would have, and this is an example, you would have 20% of that neighborhood park would be playground structures. So that's the weight of the play structures. And then the rest of the components had varying weights from 20% down to some of the smaller percentages there. So when we evaluated the park, then we rolled that up into an overall completeness score. So this example received 80% complete. We weren't looking at condition on this side of the equation. It was truly what's out there to see if it was complete. The other side was the scoring. So an A to F scale, a typical school grade. So A being good condition, F being failing. Here's an example table. So this occurs on all the park pages in the master plan. It gives you examples of what an A looks like versus what an F would look like. So you can see there on the right are examples of a playground that's in good condition receiving an A, down to the sidewalks that are F, failing with cracks accessibility concerns. So we took those two scores and then we built a quality index with those. So we provided a weighted park grade. So the example that we had here was a D minus, or roughly 62%. We multiplied that by the completeness, and then to get it on a 1 to 10 scale, multiplied by a factor of 10. So this park received a 4.9 quality index. So that was the comparison that we compared all the existing parks to. We took that, we added our recommendations to it, and then we moved the score up based on those recommendations. So this example, it moved from a 4.9 to a 7.4. We also wanted to look at this index zone with this. So the charts here you see on the top, these are the existing scores that are varying up and down all over the place on the park scoring. So the bottom row is after we provided the recommendations, we balanced those scores. So you can see that we were able to get it within that 6.5 to 7.5 range, which is what we established on the neighborhood parks. Community parks had a little different range to compare to. And then we'll quickly go through one example. So 105 of the parks in the master plan. This is an example page of what one of the parks would look like. So William O. Lytle Park, neighborhood park over on the west side of the city. It needed quite a bit of just replacement, so the condition score was lower on this park, but it also was lacking a sidewalk loop, so that helped on the completeness side. So a little bit of both. With all the parks, we had our community input, so there's a summary page on each of them that highlights what we heard and summarizes some of those comments. So this one was adding security lighting, new playground, and then soccer fields or basketball courts. This page here shows the existing conditions table. Over there on the left, it had the existing score, and then the proposed recommendations, which was adding lighting, adding a playground. The multi-use court was an alternate. We did identify some alternates, so as the budgets come in good, we can add additional amenities into those parks. And then each of the parks has an estimate to go with it. So this really tells what needs to be done at the park and gives that total cost. And these are all built in $20 and $24, and we have escalations as we go into the phases. Here's the overall budget. So 66 million, a little over 66 million is the total budget. That includes the general 51 million pot of money that can go to all 105 parks, and then specific funds that were identified in the resolution for a few of the parks. In addition to the MAPS funding, the Parks Department had some leftover 2017 bond funds that need to be spent, so those were added into this, so we were able to go a little further with some of the improvements with those additional bond dollars. So all in total is a little over 66 million. Over on the right, you'll see the phasing. So there's 1 through 5 phases with a A and B. Some of the phases have a C. Essentially, those are yearly. And this table here shows, so 2025 would start the phases. 1C is Booker T. Washington Park. So that's its own separate phase due to the budget on that one. 26, it has 2C, which is Stanley Draper Park. And then you fall all the way down to 2029. We base the phasing on current need as far as existing conditions. So we tried to geographically and looking at the scores, combine parks that made the most sense to go in each of those bid packages or phase 1A or phase A and Bs. So it'll extend all the way out through 2029. And then this is the last slide. So a little bit of highlights about some of the things that were recommended. So of 105 parks, 56 proposed playgrounds or upgrades. Majority of those are new replacements. And with all the playgrounds, we're replacing the wood fiber with poured-in-place surfacing. So that's a huge upgrade for those playgrounds. multi-use courts, all the splash pads were upgraded, and then park signs, shelters, and lighting, added a lot of solar lighting throughout the park system for the parks that needed it. So with that, I will take any questions.
One thing I was going to say, Mr. Mayor, is that I commend Kimberly Horn on the methodology. It fascinates me, but these materials and agenda item R, Q and R, we didn't receive the materials until late Friday afternoon. I feel like I need more time to spend with these two items just because there's over 570 pages, and I'm not trying to stall, I'm not trying to delay. It's kind of like James says, I don't want to be surprised with anything. And so I would just ask that on Q and R that we defer them until the next meeting so we all can have enough time to read them.
In the midst of that, I do want to add a couple comments, and I totally agree with what was said. My one question that I do have for sure is when it comes to our subcommittee meetings, when there's not quorum, how does that work as far as that being received and moving forward towards the citizens advisory? Because I know for sure I was present at the subcommittee meeting for parks as a resident, because I couldn't be heard. I feel like I'm not being heard as a council person representing my parks. So I showed up as a resident to the subcommittee meeting, and there wasn't quorum, and this still went through. So I'm just curious what that process is, how it's received, and if it matters, if it doesn't matter that we have quorum and we just move it forward, how does that work?
So if we don't have a quorum, we go ahead and hear the presentations and hear the items. Those that are there can comment. If we're not taking a straw poll, but if there's not any concerns that we should not be moving it forward, we move it on to the advisory board.
Well, it seemed to me at that same meeting that, or maybe I don't know if I missed that part of the meeting, that as I raised my concerns, no one was given the option to say, do you have any concerns as far as us keeping it here to maybe also look at it a little while longer. So that personally for me was a concerning factor of being a part of understanding that subcommittee meeting.
Right. I'd just like to add that that wasn't the first time they'd seen it. We'd done at least 2 updates.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were there 5 times.
Yeah, there was updates as we went along through the process, so it's not the first time that they had seen that.
Okay, thank you. And that's what makes me, I guess, more concerned about it, for the fact that I've been talking, at least I've had 2 meetings, and none of the things that I've asked for have been added or even, in my opinion, considered to the parks plan of what could be a betterment for some of my parks within the same system. So I agree with being able to move this back as far as us being able to look at it further, but I'm hoping that as we look at it, that we're actually taking into consideration some of the things that we are asking as the people representing these areas and some of these specific parks that we know that our residents have at least talked to us about, and some of those things that have been amended and added when some things our residents have not necessarily asked for. And I want to continue to speak out and through Woodland Park. My residents are talking about the erosion of the creek, taking away the park. And none of that I saw addressed in the park plan of this, only giving them more walking space and benches. So it's being able to maintain those places too, and also Lacey Park is backing up to another creek. So I have residents complaining about erosion for their homes. So these are more important pieces of that to me as the overall of how we consider and care for our parks. And again, as I talked about at the subcommittee meeting, we're looking at potential work that's already being done and already starting at one park, and yet we're talking about a phase 2C when it's going to be 2026 to come back and work on this same park instead of us being able to consecutively just work on the park and be able to have it open and free for everybody to enjoy at one time instead of having to break it down and you can't use this part of the park again because we're working on this. So, you know, just that continuity would be just what I'm begging for as we look at how we can just look at our park system, and especially the things that we know are already impacting work being done on some of these same places and parks.
On the Edwards Park, as far as the timing on that construction and then how this would play into it. So that is included it's in 2A, so it's the first phase of the second, so it'd be 2026. By the time even if it was in 1A, by the time it goes through design, bids and everything, it's gonna be probably a year before dirt's turned out there. So lining that up timing-wise may be difficult, even if it was in that first phase. So that's one of the things. And then we really did want to look at, Edwards Park had some bond improvement done a few years ago, and I understand the little bit of incremental improvements. It did have bond improvements done, and we really wanted to look in that first phase, especially, let's find the parks that haven't had anything done in the last 20, 30 years. And let's get those started, because those need the most work, and some of those are in such bad repair that things just need to be fixed quickly. So that is one of the ways we looked at it, was geographically, and then what's the most need. But I do understand the sequencing issue.
Thank you. And to the point of what you're saying, and I appreciate your comment, some of our parks are more frequented than others, and this is one of my parks that our community uses more frequently than others. So that's why, in my opinion, the urgency is there. I understand we do improvements, but that's because people use it.
Right.
And we need to continue to do those things for it. But even with the beautification, I know we're going to talk about that too, but the beautification, there was quite a few concerns I had about that I would like for us to also consider as well.
So
We've got a motion to defer item Q for 2 weeks.
Yes,
I would
please.
like to, I would like to probably second that, if Councilwoman Nice didn't already through her comments, but I do have just a few other questions, I think, about that sort of the engagement side of it, because something I really appreciated about the Bike Walk OKC plan, and I think a way we've done a lot of our other master plans, is we sort of release a draft to the public to get that feedback. And I know with the Bike Walk, there was this tool where people could go, make their little comments. And I recognize that does open a lot of doors that can be difficult, right? That, that we can't we can't satisfy every single comment, but I was also going to ask for deferral because I have some specific, as I went through at least my parks that have been presented to me, I had wanted to sit down with staff to talk about some specific items to see if there was opportunity to amend or sort of tweak them, just based on some of that feedback that I've heard from residents over time in particular parks of the types of things that they wanted to see. And I just am curious if that was one, if it was ever considered to sort of do that, I think with both of these plans, sort of release that draft to get sort of some reactions, because I do think, again, recognizing that might get a lot of comments that just can't quite do anything about because of budget, or, but that there might be some feedback in that draft scenario that I know in the Bike Walk example, it was oh yeah, we hadn't really thought of that, we could probably consider that. So I just, and I think too, especially for these neighborhood parks, having neighborhood associations and others sort of have that opportunity to kind of see that initial, input they were able to give, and then sort of see, okay, here, did we hear you right? Within our constraint, recognizing constraints, but to sort of, I just was curious if that was considered to do that, or if there's opportunities to do that with some of the, I don't know how many more of these plans we'll have for, through maps particularly, but I'm just curious if there's opportunities to incorporate that sorts of feedback mechanisms, because I think it can help, again, with that kind of participation of residents, seeing that we're listening. And then I think, and I think a lot of the concerns that we bring up are often, there are constraints, there are budget constraints. We maybe didn't think of everything, or we can't check every box we want to in this moment, but helping, again, with that education of, maybe we can't do that now, but, we have these other opportunities, and sort of, again, with that sort of helping educate people about how these funding mechanisms work, in my hope would help people be less frustrated that, like, oh, they just didn't listen to us. I think that's often the sense that I get from people, is they just are like, oh, they didn't listen, versus kind of understanding, oh, we had these constraints, we had this model, which I also would like to commend. I really appreciate the methodological intensity that you put into this, because it does, I think, help make sure that, to your point, we're getting to parks that haven't had that maybe some parks did get some bond funding over time, that we've been able to make improvements, but we're able to really make some of those big investments in places that just haven't had them. But I think just in efforts of hope of making this even more participatory and engaging for people, those opportunities for that feedback mechanism, so that, again, just so folks are, again, my sense is constantly that people kind of feel like, oh, they're just not listening, versus having a little bit of that back and forth. So just wanted to ask if that was considered, and opportunities to do that.
And I'll let them respond, but I think in some of these, generally what we're doing is relying on the process, with the MAPS board, the advisory board, and this, I think, like you said, because it's touching people, it's so near what they're doing, went through this extra process and went through significant amount of public input to allow that to come in, where ultimately it informs our decisions, and not all the feedback do we get to respond to. So I think the idea of having that input inform this, and being able to bring that forward and go through the review process with subcommittee, with advisory board, informing them and letting them see that, but not to bog this down further with, coming back again and saying, well, now review the plan, give us more feedback, because again, at the end of the day, it'll be frustrating to some because they don't get everything they want. So it's not to discount what you're saying. I think you're absolutely right that what we have to have is that input. And that's why we put that on that front end of really trying to put that extra effort into it to make sure we did have that feedback, where ultimately it won't include everything because it's trying to touch so many parks. But that's been kind of the limitation on that. And then allowing the process to come back through the MAPS advisory and subcommittee to be able to provide a recommendation.
I hear you on the letting the sort of process work. I will say, even with the Bike Walk OKC master plan, there was a stakeholder group that was sort of your, official body, but then there was that extra layer of kind of getting that feedback. And I think to Councilman Nice's point, it sounds like there are people that are part of those subcommittees that did not really get to have that feedback. And I guess I would also just challenge us that doing that additional layer of outreach is not bogging it down, but it's hopefully helping make it better in some of the more, I think, granular pieces of the plan. Because I think, again, to my and I do want to recognize some of this is, again, on our schedule, that we just haven't been able to schedule our meeting yet. But I did have some very specific things, really based on outreach that I've received over years of people use this park for XYZ, and they'd like to see, and I'm not seeing that in the plan, and I'd like to kind of get, again, that feedback of was this considered? Is it a budget constraint? What are the constraints? So I guess I just also want to just, that it does maybe slow something down, but hopefully in the end we would get a better product for our residents by kind of doing that work of some of that more back and forth. So.
And I will say, as we get into the design phase, so there's going to be the bid packages. We're at a lot smaller list of parks in each bid package, so maybe we're down to 10 parks. So even during that time period, as we're going back to a park that we receive the input, we have the entire list of who participated. If there's any neighborhood associations that participated, we can ask some questions, because even when you get down to the playground, what type of playground, what does it look like, what's the style? There's a few more questions that can be asked that we can get more input from those neighborhoods as we get into really seeing the actual design. Because a lot of this is, you see a playground or you see this structure, you don't really know what is that. When I start seeing things, usually that's a reaction. I like it or I don't. So there's more input opportunities as you get into design as well. even beyond the report.
I'll second everything I just heard from those counselors. And I support the deferral. I'll say that in some respects, we were off to a good start when Parks brought the different council members the improvements proposed for their respective wards in a similar sort of packet. When I say we were off to a good start, we were off to a good start insofar as that then I requested a follow-up meeting to walk through those parks and the recommendations. But we didn't finish that work. Like we went alphabetically through that brochure packet, excuse me, but we didn't finish it. I don't even know where we left off. And then for this to come to council, that's the frustrating part. Do you understand what I'm saying to you all? That we were so close in terms of like what the process needs to be, getting that engagement from the residents, and then to sit down with their elected representative to walk through the park recommendations. Because when we walked through the park recommendations, it was a wonderful back and forth of being able to say, oh, okay, well, here's something I've heard in terms of like connectivity with Belle Isle Park across 63rd Street. That is something that residents have asked for. Traffic calming on Walker between 36th and about 39th alongside Crown Heights Park. That's something that the residents asked for me at their 4th of July parade. I don't know how much more Americana and democracy I can get than someone saying, hey, this is what I'd like to see on Walker by this park, and then me as their elected representative bringing that to Parks and to the consultant. That's what's missing, is the continuation of that work. I don't know why that work stopped. I don't know why weren't there more scheduled meetings with me, the elected representative, to keep going through that packet? That's what I don't understand. And then it just shows up as this giant, not even broken up by ward, but the entirety of the city and all of its parks in this tome of War and Peace type length. Like it's frustrating. And I hate using words like frustrating up here because, again, I was bragging on the city yesterday evening with the beautification document. I heard Councilwoman Nice has some concerns in it. I'll look forward to hearing them. But I will tell you, in that document, I did feel heard. I've heard my residents' concerns in there, the bridges under Young's and Penn, the lighting recommendations, the pedestrian enhancements, the landscaping. I think it is expert work that you all have done in that beautification document, particularly as it relates to Ward 2, the Route 66 recommendations, et cetera. But that too should have been a moment of sitting down with me as the elected representative. And let me also just say, it's not because I need, I don't win money for that. I don't get honor for that. It is truly a communication thing for my residents to be able to communicate back to them that what they have brought to my attention was heard. So in terms of management, I do think, especially with these MAPS 4 projects, particularly for those of us who put hands on the crafting of them, the meetings, being able to arrange meetings with the counselors about those projects, I do think is important. I can't speak for everyone else, but I know for me, yes, I want those. Oh, one more thing. So between now and the deferral, I don't know that 2 weeks is enough, quite frankly. I almost wonder, and I hate delaying projects, but I almost think it's a month, because if you're gonna schedule sit-down meetings with the consultant in parks and maps for 8 council members, if there are all 8 who want that, that seems like that would take time to walk through at least a dozen parks, right? So that's one thing I would bring up. The second thing is, I love Councilwoman Hammond's note. These are action items now. I love her note about the way we did Bike Walk, being able to have a clickable link where people can say, here's the draft Bike Walk plan. I mean, we did that and people added to it, and I don't see anything wrong with saying, hey, we can't do that thing you said, but the next bond or the next maps, but telling people that communication I think is important. But I do think opening up where people can see it, and that leads me to my third and final thing, which is whether it's the beautification or whether it's these parks plans, I think that there has to be a landing page for people to be able to see these proposals. Even after they're approved, people need to be able to see what's coming. I wish I could tell you my brain can hold all of that information, and when I go out and do these meetings, I can, benches and sidewalks, but that's not possible. But if I have some sort of slide or some sort of brochure, so I think we just got to be thinking about how are we communicating these really cool improvements that are coming. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so Councilman Stunsover, you first articulated the desire to defer. You did hear a comment just now about the length of the deferral. Do you want to make a motion?
I'd like to be a deferral of 2 weeks. If we need some more time, we can come back and revisit that. But for right now, I just want to move to defer it for 2 weeks, please.
Okay. We've got a motion. Let's see if we can bring that up electronically. It's not on my screen, but it looks like we have a motion and a second. I'd like to vote aye.
I'll also vote aye.
Passes unanimously. So this item Q is deferred for 2 weeks.
And then I'd like to make the same motion for item 11R.
Now, Mike, I do have a question for you. Do you want to hear the presentation today, or do you want to defer the whole thing? I mean, I really don't. I'm ambivalent, but I just want to make. Okay. All right. We'll do the presentation, and then we'll take up the deferral.
So Paul Reichbost from Guernsey is here to go through this project.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of council. We will briefly go over what is in the beautification plan right now, and then talk further, answer a few questions of what you have up front. Briefly, our team is comprised of a few different local firms headed up by us at Guernsey. The beautification project dedicated just under $28 million to beautification efforts across the city, with a $5 million operating fund for the planning department and others to execute and maintain. The MAPS 4 resolution contained a list of potential locations for projects, so we used this as our go-by for creating all of the beautification efforts, focusing on each location listed in the resolution. The I-35 and I-44 bridges over the Oklahoma River were removed from our consideration because ODOT will be executing much larger projects, so we could use those dollars on the other beautification projects. Through our stakeholder engagement and public input, we had a survey, we did a lot of stakeholder meetings and public meetings, just like the Parks Master Plan did. We kind of focused on 2 areas of a vision for each project consideration. So creating people-centered places and then beautifying connections were kind of where we ended up with our unified theme for how we would assess each project location and the elements at each one. We also then evaluated each location and the proposed projects through kind of 5 different principles. So we wanted to look how it would affect people, how it might affect promotion of the city. Does the project have a purpose? Is it sustainable? And does it build connections in the future? So the proposed projects, as I mentioned, kind of follow along with the council resolution for all of the locations. We did split up item 11 on there, which is, it's actually kind of a larger project, a corridor project on I-44, and then 2 sub-projects underneath I-44 in that corridor area. That's kind of the, and then as I mentioned, we removed the 2 bridges across the river since ODOT will be doing much larger projects. And then just briefly to go over the budgets and the phasing. So we have 4 phases of actual construction work, where phase 1 was the land purchase and then our master planning project. So phase 2 will be Route 66 projects, the Bessie Coleman Garden and airport approaches, and Reno and Eastern from Bricktown to FAM. Phase 3 will be the 3 pedestrian bridges, 2 along I-44 and 1 over I-240. and then the city entrances, so every state highway and US interstate entrance into the city will receive an entrance treatment. Then phase 4 will be the 23rd Street and the Ralph Ellison statue, the Clara Looper corridor, and I forgot to mention trees. The maps for the resolution includes $1 million for trees, so we've broken that into 2 separate trees projects. So the larger phase of that will be phase 4, and then phase 5 will be treatments at I-40 and Council, the I-44 corridor, some 23rd Street near OCU, and then I-240 from 44 to 35. And with that, I'll take initial questions.
So I have a question on the city entrances. So is that going to be at the city limits?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yep.
I mean, that's a matter for debate, but my theory is if you know, people who've fought wars for land, I mean, like, that's our city limits, you know.
Yes.
Where people think the city limits are, we should put it where they truly are.
And oftentimes, unfortunately, we find that in some of our presentations from staff that the boundaries are within the city limits and not at the city limits in the depictions. And so I'm real sensitive to that, considering it cuts off like most of my ward. So, thank you.
The presentation you gave us today visually, is that contained in these materials, or is it this different? Do you know? Let's make it simple. Can I just have a copy of today's presentation?
Yes, we can get you a copy of the presentation.
Is that the actual master plan that you had?
Yes,
Yeah.
that is, the presentation is taken from the master plan.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So just to be clear, we said at city limits? Is that right?
Yeah, I did, yeah. Are you?
Okay.
Why?
All right. At Pot County, I mean, that's, I guess.
Well, it's along the
every
it's
city
along the
limit.
interstate, so, yeah, I mean, it is at the edge of Pot County. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
There's a sign there now from ODOT, but we can do better.
I had a couple things. My first concern, as we look at this particular plan, right now we're working on the streetscape for Northeast 23rd Street as far as the planning, and yet I'm seeing the phase for this particular corridor project to be a little later. So, you know, it's, again, those kind of things that are concerning, because we're trying to work on a timeline to fix one thing, and then we're going to have to come back and continue a project instead of getting all of these things done at once. So that's one piece of, I'm hoping we can look at that a little further. The other is this Ralph Ellison statue. I want to be very clear, very clear. This was something that I asked for us to put into maps 4, and it was very clear for the intent to be where the area of where Ralph Ellison grew up, and not at the corner of Northeast 23rd Street and MLK. So I'm hoping that we will revise this, because we just talked about in the previous presentation about how some of us have crafted these things in the intent of where we expected these things to go. So for this, we have a Ralph Ellison statue, as you see even in the presentation, a monument that's located in New York City. So the goal was to be able to depict the area of where he grew up and the reasons why those literary works were so significant. Not at the library. The library already bears his name. The library has a statue in it that also talks more about him. And quite frankly, that particular area of 23rd and MLK where the library sits, there are plans from previous years ago that talked about putting other folks or people that are unsung or sung heroes from the community within this particular area. And in my opinion, this should be done with the streetscape project as far as that planning piece, instead of us telling someone this is where that needs to go. So I wanted to be very clear that the intent was never for this to be at Northeast 23rd and MLK.
Take that in consideration.
Okay, if there's no other comments or questions.
Yes, sorry.
Oh.
Thanks, Mayor. Again, to me, this is some of the most exciting work, and I just really want to applaud you all for what you've done here, both the MAPS office and the consultant. And I also want to double down on what I just heard from Councilwoman regarding the coordination of the streetscape with this beautification work. To me, that's, almost self-evident. So the fact that it wasn't is kind of concerning. So just wanted to give you all some guidance there. And then, I know there are a lot of projects here, but for me, when this comes back to council, at the, concern of belaboring the point, I do think that, you all are doing such literally beautiful graphic work here. And I think the presentation that we received in this packet, I think the public needs to see what you all are, you don't have to spend 5 minutes on each of the projects, but I do think the public needs to see what you're saying. I think that a lot of people consider MAPS for 16 projects. I think they forget that even within beautification, there are these additional 16 projects that are going to be transformative. I'll just conclude by naming this one, for instance. I-44 between Penn and Classen, I'm going tonight to Neighbors Night Out, and Treadwell neighborhood. Their concern, and Mayfair Heights, Mayfair West, their concerns, we've got emails in recent weeks about the litter and the trash that we see at I-44 in May, all up and down that corridor, in fact. And one of the things I was able to do in that email was to let that resident know that not only is Director of Public Works, Debbie Miller, working to address the immediate concerns there, but that this beautification project was coming. That was like a week ago, and then I opened my packet and I see that you all have taken such thoughtful care in what you all want to do, literally from Route 66 at Portland, right, all the way up to by Penn Square Mall on Classen. That is going to change the very sense of place and character and dignity. I promise you that word dignity, that all those neighborhoods feel. They feel very often over there abandoned. They feel like no one cares about the maintenance. They feel like the chain link fencing that's along I-44 feels like a prison, right? I mean, these are the sort of words I hear. And as someone who taught on South Side at Jefferson, I heard it also about those bridges over 240, right? Those sorts of projects are truly transformative, and our residents need to see them. They need to see what's coming. They need to know that when they voted for MAPS by overwhelming numbers, that they were truly investing in their neighborhoods and their corridors, and that we haven't forgotten, and that you all are doing that work. And that needs to be in the presentation. And again, it doesn't need to be a 10-hour dissertation, but people need to see what's coming. And I think they'll be very excited to see what's coming. So I'll just leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you all for the great work that you're doing. I really do appreciate that. And I think any of the comments that have been made today aren't a reflection of poor work. I think it's just a reflection of wanting to digest more because it's a lot of information. So I really appreciate the leadership you all have provided in this and the work that you've done with the MAPS Advisory Board and the MAPS team.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now, Mark, you'd like to make a motion to defer this 2 weeks?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. This is to defer the item for 2 weeks. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, I'm going to step aside. Vice Mayor Peck is presiding.
Thank you. We'll move on now to item S1, a resolution authorizing the municipal councilor to confess judgment without admitting liability in the case of Brianna Buckler versus the City of Oklahoma City. Staff has not requested executive session, so we can take a motion on. And the item passes unanimously. Item T1 is a resolution authorizing the municipal councilor to confess judgment without admitting liability in the case of Ann Murphy versus the City of Oklahoma City, and staff has not requested executive session. So we can take a motion. And that item passes. Next item up is item U1, joint resolution with the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority approving the settlement of a workers' compensation claim. Staff has not requested executive session. We can take a motion on the item. And the item passes. Item V is a request for executive session on the advice of the municipal counselor to receive confidential communications in the case of Rita Bornoff versus the City of Oklahoma City. We do need to vote on this. We will take up the executive session after all other business. And that item passes. Item W is also a request for executive session regarding the case of the City of Oklahoma City and the links at Mustang Creek. And the item passes. Item X is the executive session request for Oklahoma County Board of County Commissioners versus the City of Oklahoma City. We'll take a motion on the item. The item passes. Item Y, claims recommended for denial. Executive session has not been requested. And the item passes. Item Z, so claims recommended for approval and executive session has not been requested. And the item passes. And now we'll move on to item 12, comments from council. Ward 1?
No, ma'am.
Ward 2? I don't have anything today. Ward 4?
Good, thank you.
Ward 5? 6? 7?
Thank you. Just wanted to give a couple of thoughts. We're going to do a Ward 7 Town Hall on the 17th, so that'll be next Tuesday at the First Americans Museum. Very grateful for them to open up their doors for us to be able to have this conversation from 6 to 7:30. So we're going to talk about some of the things we've heard today, including the Lottie bike lanes. So there's some updates that I would love for our residents to hear, as well as what we talked about as far as our community and neighborhood parks and getting us prepared for the general obligation bond, as well as some community resources and services that will also be available. So just wanted to make sure that was also said and heard for people to come and be a part and experience Ward 7, as well as see the First Americans Museum for yourself if you have not seen it as of yet. Just wanted to mention, as we were talking earlier about some of our parks and recreation centers, I'm curious as far as the lighting is concerned about around our recreation centers. I know I've mentioned it about our parks, but I'll continue to talk about that, lack of lighting around our park systems at night. But Particularly, I bring this up because of the Willie D. Johnson Recreation Center. Across the street at the James Stewart Golf Course area, it's lit up. And unfortunately, when you look across the street for the recreation center, it's dark. So just curious how we can continue to just keep some lighting in that area, not just one side of our city property, but also on the other as we look to continue to protect our assets as far as just bringing and shining the light and showing the beauty of the space, because it is a beautiful space, especially at night, to see how those lights reflect the swimming pool in the building. So just to see the darkness in it, I was a little concerned about that. And also want to thank the groups that invited me out for the peace walk that we had a couple Saturdays ago. It was a lot of people in attendance, and clearly our community is concerned about some of the things that have been taking place within our community as well. So want to continue to keep our eyes on those incidents, and also looking at our nuisance abatement that we have been looking at and looking towards and looking forward to some more improvements as far as that nuisance abatement is concerned for some of our areas. And also for our planning department, as we start the street enhancement project, I know we'll be having a meeting on the 12th in the city to talk more about that. And there is a survey online for all of our residents to continue to give your input, so please do that. And I just wanted to just close my remarks again, honoring Pastor Reed. They had a wonderful homegoing celebration for him this past Friday, as well as this past Saturday. So he will truly be a missed pastor within our community walls. So our community is definitely feeling the loss of Pastor Reed in our community, and just continue to keep your thoughts on this part of Northeast Oklahoma City, as well as the church family that he has left behind. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ward 8.
I wanted to thank North Oklahoma City Soccer Club. On Sunday, we had the ribbon cutting for the CB Cameron Sports Complex Phase 1. It includes 5 new soccer fields that has lighting, restrooms, concessions, parking, and a new entrance on Northwest 122nd. It was a great event. It's the first time I've ever been to a ribbon cutting that lasted 3 hours, but it was a lot of fun. I want to thank the John Marshall cheerleaders and the John Marshall marching band. There were bands playing, there was a DJ. It was quite festive, but the great thing about it, we found out that there are some companies such as the Inasmuch Foundation and the Cameron Foundation that are going to donate additional money to improve the park and the sports complex even more. So it was a fun day. Thank you to everybody that put that event together.
Thank you. And next up will be item number 13, citizens to be heard. Michael Washington.
Thank you, everyone. My goodness, this was an illustrious meeting today. I'm not going to hold you long because I don't have but 3 minutes. I would have had 15. This is a letter I want to read to the public from Miss Katie Friddle, City of Oklahoma City Planning Department, regarding my single-handedly taking the initiative to preserve the Freedom Center. Everyone needs to find out today that there wasn't no other people that's running that group today. Let me stop all this madness right quick. Mr. Washington, this is a letter in regard to your request for summary of the initiation of the designation of the Freedom Center as a historic landmark. My records indicate that you spoke to Lisa Cronister and I. First, we all met at your request on September 26th, 2017 to discuss the Freedom Center. At that November 1st, 2017 meeting, the City of Oklahoma City Historic Preservation Commission spoke to you under citizens to be heard in order to make the commission aware of the Freedom Center in historic significance and its current condition. The commission was interested in the Freedom Center and asked you to come back and present additional information at the December meeting. You met with staff on November 14th and discussed your presentation, and then you presented the commission on December 6, 2017. At that time, the commission asked to have the initiation of the designation of the Freedom Center to get the process started on the next available agenda. That was heard, and the vote to initiate the process was made on February 7, 2018. On May 30th, 2018, you spoke to the commission meeting regarding the designation of the Freedom Center as a historic landmark. Not any of the others, but Michael Watson did. Hello, let's stop all this idiotic, crazy stuff today, and y'all are going to recognize me, bottom line. That's right. Now then, how much time do I have left? Reading on. Okay. You spoke at a commission meeting regarding the designation of the Freedom Center as a historic landmark, and the commission voted to recommend the designation. The designation was approved by City Council on August 28, 2018. In other recent landmark designations, the action has been initiated through the commission identification of a potential landmark and their coordination with property owners. I'm reading y'all because I don't have much time. However, the Freedom Center is an excellent example of an interested, concerned citizen, you, bringing the potential landmark to the commission's attention. Not me, not nobody else. And asking that the process be initiated. I did. It's because of the great work and the foresight of Michael Washington
30 seconds, please.
that we see the Freedom Center being preserved. Y'all gonna recognize this one. I'm not talking about necessarily y'all, but the people that run it are gonna be sued. Y'all know Michael don't just talk. I keep seeing people going on TV and don't mention my work. Think I'm gonna allow that crap to go on? No, it ain't gonna happen. You're gonna recognize this one because without me, we'll be talking about Map 4 and all that crap regarding this situation. Now then, in closing, please let me know if I can answer any additional questions for you. Katie Fredo, Oklahoma City Planning Commission partner.
Thank you, Mr. Washington.
You have a great day.
We will recess into executive session at this time, where we will reconvene afterwards to adjourn. And we are reconvened from executive session and adjourned. Thank you.